Thank you very much. Is that your hint to get going?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we may have to push the got it button.
Yeah. Oh, we got it. Here we go. This one. Oh, you gotta do it on that.
Okay, thank you. We can now begin our meeting of the Western Riverside Council Government Executive Committee meeting on April 4th. And I want to thank all of you for being here, some in person, most on Zoom. And we'll call this meeting to order. We're going to begin with the flag salute, and I'm going to have new mother council member from the city of Corona, Jackie Casillas.
Thank you. Please join me with your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
with
and
justice
justice for all.
for all.
Just a reminder to keep your microphones off unless you're going to be speaking. Thank you. Okay, Janice, roll call, please.
Absolutely. I still got a couple people coming in. When I call your jurisdiction, if you would please be so kind as to state your name. City of Banning,
David Happy.
Beaumont,
Mike Laura.
Calamasa,
Wendy Hewitt.
Canyon Lake,
Dale Welty.
Corona,
Jackie Casillas.
Eastvale,
Christian Dinko, Eastvale.
Hemet.
Malcolm Lilienthal,
Welcome, sir. Harupa Valley,
Chris Brass.
Lake Elsinore,
Brian Tisdale.
Menifee. Is City of Menifee here? Moreno Valley,
Ed Delgado.
Murrieta,
Lori Stone.
Norco,
Kevin Bash.
Paris,
Rita Rogers.
Riverside,
Ronaldo Fierro.
San Jacinto, Temecula,
James Stewart.
Wildemar,
Ben Benoit here.
County District 1,
Evan Jeffries here.
District 2,
Karen Spiegel.
District 3, District 5,
Jeff Hewitt here.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Phil Pauly for Eastern.
Western Municipal Water District.
Brenda Denstead, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Riverside County Superintendent of Schools.
Edwin Gomez. Thank you.
Thank you. And WRCOG TAC Chair. Real quick, I'm just going to go back for who didn't answer. City of Menifee. City of San Jacinto.
Here.
Thank you. And County of Riverside District 3. And the TAC Chair has just joined us. He might still be connecting to audio. Mr. Van Wagenen, can you hear us, sir?
I can, present, thank you.
Very good. Madam Chair, that concludes roll call and we have quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to go on to item 4, which is AB 361 findings. And this is the assembly bill that allows us to meet virtual meetings. Janice, do we have any members wishing to ask questions, either public or committee members?
I have no requests.
Okay,
Move to approve.
we have a motion from Supervisor Hewitt and City of San Jacinto, second.
Thank you. City of Banning,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Eastvale,
Yes.
Hemet,
yes.
Harupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee, Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildemar,
Yes.
County District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
All right, that concludes the roll call vote for that item and it passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to move into closed session and items will be taken in order in which they appear on the agenda. And the closed session will be for those staff members that have a part in the discussion on closed session and of course our legal counsel. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on any items of closed session?
I see no requests and no hands raised.
Okay, as we have started, we would like all cameras to be on when we go into closed session to confirm that is who is on the other end of the Zoom call. So at this time, we're going to transition to closed session.
Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording.
This room has been complaining about snacks, we just brought some in. Okay, we are now on item 6 for public comments. Do we have anybody wishing to address this body on anything that's not on the agenda?
I have no requests.
Okay, we're now on to item 7. And all items can be done in one motion. That's 7A through 7L. Does anybody have an item they wish to pull? Wendy Hewitt.
Yes, I'd like to pull 7E3, please.
Okay. So we'll just pull all of E.
Yes.
So we have 7A through D and then F through L. Anybody want to make a motion?
Madam Chair.
We have a motion. Second by Brenda and first by
No,
Jackie.
no. Madam Chair, I was trying to pull something. That's why I had my hand raised.
Oh. Well, it's blending in. We can barely see it. Now that you say it, I can see it.
Oh, sorry. Madam Chair, I would wish to like to pull 7F as in Frank.
Okay, Jackie, are you willing to?
Yes, I will amend my motion.
Okay,
To accept everything except E and F.
okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Rubali
Second.
seconds.
Let him do it.
Okay. Mr. Barajas is the second. Janice?
City of Banning,
Yes.
City of Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Eastvale, City of Eastvale.
Yes.
Thank you. Hemet,
Yes.
Rupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee, Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside, City Riverside, San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildomar,
Yes.
County District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District, Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That concludes the roll call item for the rest of those items and they all pass.
Okay, Ms. Hewitt.
Yes, I would like to know why reimbursement went from $265,000 to over $3 million.
Great. Councilmember Hewitt, this is actually looking at the agreement, the initial agreement was for 2.92 million and the city asked for a change order in the amount of $265,000. So it didn't go from $265,000 to 3.2 million. It went from 2.9 million to 3.2 million.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the city incurred some additional cost related to the relocation of some drainage lines. And that's a TUMP eligible expense, and we are bringing the amendment forward at their request.
Thank you very much.
We'll hold off and see if we can combine the two. Ms. Binstaff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a point of clarification, and for the sake of full transparency in accordance with our strategic plan and the desires of this body moving forward, on these line items, there isn't an indication for the 7 items that were signed, because it says down at the very bottom of the report, there's no fiscal impact. Well, obviously there's a fiscal impact because there's over $100,000 that was spent or close to it. But you know, there's no notation as to what funds these are coming from. And I understand we just passed, you know, the financial update on the finances, and there's a single line item at the very bottom that talks solely about consulting labor. And if we could break those out, because these are for very different things, and just in full transparency, I think it would be better if we could break out that line item in the actual financial updates to actually put these into what funds they're being attributed to, so we can keep track of it, because legal has been a significant expense for us in this last go around. And I think it's just in transparency's sake, so the public knows exactly where these funds are being attributed to, would be much appreciated going forward. And that would just be my point of clarification in the future moving forward on this item as it comes forward on these signatures for under the executive director's authority.
Did you want to, is it just for clarification for
Yeah.
future? Nothing about this agenda item?
Yeah, I can get with staff and find out exactly what these are. I don't want to hold up the committee because we've already we're real past our point. We've had a long day already in closed session. So happy to circle back with staff on those issues for my edification. But in the future, I would like to see if we could make sure we do that way.
Thank you.
And with
Is that a
that,
motion then?
yes, I'm happy to make those motions on both of those items to move for approval. Thank you.
Did I hear Ms. Hewitt make a second?
Second, yes.
City of
Janice?
City of Banning,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Eastville,
Yes.
Hemet,
Yes.
Rupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee, Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside, San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildomar,
Yes.
County District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
All right, that concludes roll call vote for those 2 items, and they also pass.
Okay. We're now on item 8. The first one of the reports is an update from the California State Association of Counties.
Yes,
Ms.
that's
Mars? Okay.
Chair. Good afternoon. This is Andrea Maris, Board Assistant to CSAC First Vice President and Riverside County Supervisor Chuck Washington. CSAC convened its executive committee 2 weeks ago to discuss the state's recently announced CARE Court proposal. The Community Assistance Recovery and Empowerment Court would allow family members, behavioral health providers, and first responders to ask civil court judges to order a clinical evaluation and, if necessary, implement a plan for an unhoused person in need of mental health services. The proposal envisions county behavioral health, public defenders, public guardians, as well as many other county services as key providers for this treatment plan. While all counties share the urgency to assist those who are living with serious mental illness, this proposal and tackling homelessness overall requires all levels of government, counties, cities, and the state to work together to clearly define roles and sustainable resources. CSAC continues to engage in conversation with the state administration to address concerns related to funding, along with intensive efforts at all levels of government to ensure housing and services for those most in need. To date, the cost of implementing CareCore as proposed is unknown. However, we do know that roughly 7,000 to 12,000 people could qualify for the court-ordered care, which is roughly 6% of the state's homelessness population. As we all know, adequate housing is a major piece of the puzzle, and without it, innovative programs like CareCore will likely not experience anticipated levels of success. While there are many unknowns with the proposal as presented, we wholeheartedly agree with the direction and intent of CareCore and desire to work hand in hand with cities and the state to create a mutually productive proposal. I'd like to invite you to review the references that are attached in the receive and file portion of this update, and that is it. Thank you all for your time.
Does anybody have any questions for Andrea? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. That's a receive and file. Next, we are on item B, which is the second quarter draft budget amendment.
Thank you. Next slide, please. This is a continuation from the conversation we had last week. I'll cover a lot of material, but I will go fairly quickly. If I missed anything, please let me know. I'm happy to go into greater detail. As you'll recall, the second quarter budget amendment as it relates to HERO was for an increase in revenues of $930,000, expenditures of $900,000. Next slide, please. To clarify, we get revenue from the HERO program in 4 different categories. The first being sponsor revenue. Next slide, which is essentially 1% of the cost of issuance. So as we go forward and end up with an assessment, 1% of that is what comes to is what did come to WRCOG. But as you're aware, the executive committee halted new assessments in December of 2020. Next slide, please. Next up would be the annual administration fee. Next slide. That is a fee that is in place. The dollar amount of the fee has changed over time. The majority of those happened before March of 2018. So if you look at the circle here of existing assessments, you'll see that the blue represents the lion's share, which is pre-March 2018. Next slide. So that's what I ended up using for the calculation here to let you know. So for pre-March 18, $95 is what the assessment was. And of that, WRCOG collected $52. Next slide. The breakdown for the full $95 is included here. It includes other services that go along with either calculations, bond counsel, recording by the county, financial advisors, etc. Next slide. Next is the prepayment admin fee. Next slide. This fee is $395. And again, it's broken down into a number of groups, as you can see here. The WRCOG portion currently is $225, which is what happened. Next slide, as of July 1. You'll notice that before July 1, the fee was $175. So before July 1, meaning at the time that the budget estimates were made for the current fiscal year, that's what the fee was estimated to be. However, once we got into the fiscal year, the fee changed, and that will be part of the basis of the change you'll see in the revenue side, because we made revenue estimates based on $175, but by the time that we started actually collecting, it went up to $225. Next slide, please. Next slide. So for the delinquencies, which is a very small portion, if you follow the path, so generally speaking, as a property owner, you pay your property tax, and a portion of that works to go service the bonds that were issued with respect to your actual assessment. So what happens when you don't pay it, generally speaking, is you're subject to foreclosure. This body has taken the position that they did not want foreclosure to be an option. So instead, a third party intervened. So essentially, someone else took over the debt. So that way the bondholder was still paid, which means there was no foreclosure. In doing that, it essentially meant that the debt does not go away. It does continue to collect interest. It's a secured debt because it's tied to the property. There's just no guarantee on when the debt's going to actually be paid. And that's the risk that whomever is the third party takes on. Next slide. So again, that debt has value because it's secured by the lien. One of the requirements that was imposed by this body is for the third party is that they cannot foreclose. So while they're the debt holder and would otherwise have the legal right to do so, next slide, WRCOG has said you can't do that. We've had a little bit of a change from the beginning of the program up until about 2017. Renovate America was the one who did that. There was a time that they got out of the business and WRCOG did it itself for about a year, and then it switched over to First National Assets. In the top right, you'll see the dollar amounts that are associated with the delinquencies. COVID was very significant for us. As you'll see, big picture, it's not a large dollar amount, but it is a recurring revenue stream. Next slide. This will look familiar to some of you, but it shows the revenue sources. The yellow being the sponsor revenue, which only happened when we were issuing new assessments. You'll see some of it in the 21-22 year, which is after we stopped issuing assessments, but that is actually because we had a piece tied up within the Renovate bankruptcy. So we ended up collecting that $680,000 much later than we otherwise anticipated. Next slide. What changed the sponsor revenue was that $680,000. At the time that the budget was prepared and adopted, there was no expectation that we would either issue or receive any proceeds from that last bond issuance that was tied up within the Renovate America bankruptcy. Once we did that, that ended up bringing us in $680,000, which were offset by some legal fees, but ended up with a net positive for us. And that's 680 of the 930,000. Next slide. The other piece is that change in dollar amount. I mentioned the prepayment fee went up by $50 after the time the budget was adopted. It went up $50. That ended up creating an additional revenue stream, which is where the $250,000 came in. It is possible, probable, that we will surpass that again and end up bringing in more revenues by the time the fiscal year ends. But this is a Q2 report. That's where we stand today, or at least out of Q2. Next slide, please. So adding those two things together is where the revenue changes came from. The $930,000 broke down from the cost of issuance with the Renovate America bond of $680,000 and the additional $50 per transaction for the prepayment fee. Next slide, please. And on the expenditure side, you'll see where the expenses were. When Renovate America was still in business, they honored their indemnity agreement with us. We did not incur much in the way of legal fees. Once that went away, we suddenly brought on a bunch of legal fees. On the top, you'll see the categories of the $1 million that came about within legal fees. In particular, I would point out the Renovate America bankruptcy. That was the process that ultimately yielded us the $680,000, but took some work to get there. The bottom is the same number, but broken down by vendor. Next slide. And happy to answer any questions, but the requested action is the same as last month, which is approval of the second quarter draft budget amendments for fiscal year 21-22.
Do I have any questions? Do we have any questions? Not me. I see no hands.
Ruba moves to approve.
Delgado seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Delgado. Thank you, Mr. Barajas. Roll call, please.
City of Banning,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Eastville,
Yes.
Hemet, City of Hemet, Rupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee, Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside, San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildomar,
Yes.
County District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 3, District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes roll call vote for that item, and it passes unanimously.
Okay, item 8C.
Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse myself for this item, so I'll step outside.
I think we all are.
All right, you can walk us through this one at lightning speed, I believe.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Casey Daly, Director of Energy and Environmental Programs. Talking about the PACE Admin and Legal Services Contract. As you know, December 2011, we initiated the PACE program. In 2014, expanded statewide. In 2015, WRCOG amended its General Counsel agreement for Best and Krieger to include bond counsels related services. In June of 15, that was amended. Next slide, please. In accordance with our policies, we reissued a new RFP. In August, we received one proposal. At the time we received the proposal, an evaluation committee was formed with representatives from Grupo Valley, Menifee, and San Jacinto. At the direction of the evaluation committee in November, we reissued the RFP, kept it open for 7 weeks this time, and received two proposals, one from Best and Krieger, one from Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Young. Okay. Last month at the Admin and Finance Committee, the Evaluation Committee recommended the selection of Best and Krieger. That recommendation ultimately went through, but there were some questions, so I want to touch on those very briefly. Next slide, please. So the way bond counsel services are paid in the PACE program are through fees paid in the program. And so over the course of the program, the two major ways bond counsel services were paid for was one, through the issuance of new bonds, and two, through the portion of the annual administrative fee that Kurt walked through during the budget amendment update. With the discontinuation of the residential PACE program, one of these two forms of revenue or forms of payment are no longer present. Next slide, please. So there was a question last month about whether or not the proposed contract for Best and Krieger was more or less than the arrangement previously. And so I've put up this table here to show on the previous contract how Best and Krieger was paid. As I mentioned in the previous slide, a percentage of the cost of issuance fee and a portion of the annual admin fee. If you look at an average of fiscal years from 17-18 through 2021, through those two forms, there was about 1.5 million on average annually. With the new proposed contract, there is no more residential bonds that are being issued, so that is not applicable. So the annual admin fee is being adjusted, recommended to being adjusted, as well as the inclusion of the prepayment fee. This will allow WRCOG to have much more certainty in the cost of this contract on a year-over-year basis going forward. And you can see at the bottom, we're estimating about $680,000 in annual compensation for this contract for this year. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this contract does provide some certainty by basing the fee on two things. One, the number of prepayments, as well as the number of active assessments. Over time, we will see these fees decline as more assessments are paid off or matured. And as I mentioned before, on March, at the ANF meeting in March, there was a recommendation to the executive committee to select Best and Krieger. And since this is related to legal services, WRCOG staff is not making a recommendation. And with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. Try to move quickly. Happy to answer any questions too, though.
I don't see any. Do I see any hands?
I don't see any hands raised.
Move to approve.
Supervisor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to state my piece. I will be opposing extending any further contracts to Best and Krieger as a result of our long-going challenges related to the exclusive monopoly and contract that we had with Renovate America, the bankruptcy, the litigation, the past investigations, the new investigations that are underway, the dubious financial funds given to Western Community Energy, and all of the unauthorized disbursements. I blame in part the previous executive director for those actions. I blame our legal counsel for never once raising the red flag or yellow flag or any flag on any of those issues. And I blame ourselves for not being more vigilant in protecting the public's dollars. And I do not believe the Best and Krieger, as currently represented, will continue or will look out for the best interest of the taxpayers and the ratepayers and our commission, who that legal counsel is supposed to report to and work for, but does not. So with that, I will be opposing Best and Krieger.
I know we got a motion, but I'd like to go along with Supervisor Jeffries. When's the contract up? Is it already passed up?
So this is one, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no end date on because it was tacked on to the general counsel contract. Is that correct, Casey?
Yes, sir. So this
Well,
was,
I think-
to answer your question, Madam Chair, the proposed contract, as indicated here, would be through June of 2024, the end of June of 2024. And again, just to reiterate it, this is for administrative and legal services specifically related and only related to the administration of the PACE program and the existing bank of assessments, as well as services related to bond counsel. So I understand everybody's comments. I just wanted to reiterate the purpose of this specific contract.
Okay, Kevin Bash.
To Supervisor Jeffrey's point, as you know, Supervisor, there were people that were calling for issues. They were calling out issues. I don't want to get too deeply into it, but that's part of the reason that we hired the new director that we have. During my tenure as the chair, I had lots of conversations, and toward the end, I did bring stuff out. I will not be supporting this, but I do think that the admin finance, I think they were aware of things that were being revealed as time went on. So I do think there was a lot more due diligence than we're being given credit for. Thank you.
Mr. Barajas.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to be clear too, and I know Crystal and Ann we kind of shared this at the Admin and Finance Committee. We were also very cautious of the whole situation, which is why we recommended or required a second RFP. And to be clear, as Casey has said, this is a very specific scope. As you know, Hooper Valley is one of the few cities that does not contract with BB&K. We have a different legal service. So the only reason why I moved, and the reason why I think why our committee and Crystal and I can correct me if I'm wrong, is it's a very specific scope. We tried to get somebody else for that specific reason, to try to alleviate any concerns that BB&K has a monopoly, which they do, in my opinion, and I think a lot of our opinions. But for this very specific scope, they were the best suited, the lowest cost to our taxpayers, our residents. Now, if the question is BB&K the best for overall, I think that's a different question, different topic, different agenda. That's not what we're discussing now. This is PACE and a very specific scope, which is why as part of the committee, I recommended them, and it's why I made the motion. So I will stick with that, even though I still have the concerns that my colleagues, as Kevin and Chair Spiegel and Supervisor Jeffries has mentioned. I agree with you guys. It's a very specific scope that we need to get taken care of now. So I'll just say that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to echo what Chris said. We went to staff because we have the same concerns. BB&K is everywhere. They came back and no one responded. We sent them back out saying this isn't acceptable. They extended the time. They did it extra time. And we still had a very limited group of people who applied, which I think he said there was 3 Two. So BB&K and another one. The problem with the other one, they're going to represent this group very well. They don't know what they're doing. They were basically grasping at straws, which I didn't like. They didn't prepare they didn't even actually have, I don't think, the full scope of what the job would entail. And so in this particular case, that's why Chris has made the motion and I would make the second, because this isn't about the whole contract. And I do think that a future discussion needs to be had about BB&K and the full contract. And I think everything needs to be reworked there because they do have the same concerns. And that's what we were talking about in that ad hoc committee. But I don't think in this particular case, it would behoove us to go with the other contract when we know that we're going to put somebody in there who's not qualified to handle the job. And this particular job is specific to PACE programs. It's specific to what we're, going to have to confront, which is all the problems that happened that this should never have happened, that we should have been aware of and that need to be taken care of. So in this particular case, unfortunately, they were our option. The other team, the other group just doesn't have a general concept of it, and no one else wanted to touch it. So we went all over and no one wants to touch it. So that's the recommendation on my second.
Where I was going, did your committee talk with BB&K during the process?
We talked with, it was Chris, Kurt. We didn't really discuss with BB&K. We just looked at their documents.
Well, I think the concern needs to be a discussion, and I would like to see us shorten this contract with the ability to keep things going and pulling it out of the general contract, but to have an ability of maybe 1 year and then renewed or whatever, by having the ability to have that conversation, or we just continue this item until we have that conversation and the concerns, because I don't think it's a conversation that has been had with BB&K, and I think it's critical that we do. If there's this much challenges with members and there is, I don't want to say accusations, but concerns, that needs to be shared before we sign any agreement. I'm sorry, I just.
So
really
I would
strong.
agree to do it for 1 year and then in that 1 year time, maybe start opening those discussions and then have that discussion before we sign a second year.
So, and to be clear, so if you take no action, we default to our existing agreement, which has no end date. So it would still be BB&K performing those services while you have the conversation. If you chose to go with the 1 year, I would take that as direction that I would have to have the conversation with BB&K, assuming they agreed, we go forward and do that. And if you're looking to agendize a specific conversation, I would just need to know whether this is an open or closed session conversation, depending on the nature of what you would like to discuss.
Probably be closed session.
Yeah, I would say closed session.
I think we should probably just continue it before we
Okay.
do this.
Yeah.
Because we still fall back on the agreement.
As long as we're covered with legal counsel, they do understand this issue, but I agree. I think we need to have that.
Before we get into a contract that binds us with a firm that there hasn't been an upfront serious conversation with, I think that needs to happen before we do anything. So we will fall back onto the existing, having the conversation and then make that decision moving forward.
I concur.
Supervisor Hewitt.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I would like to point out, especially a lot of things that Supervisor Jeffrey said are large concerns, and certainly with Commissioner Bash and others. I would like to point out what a change it made bringing in somebody from the outside like Kurt, and what he's been able to not only find out and to have that appearance of, hey, it's not just our old buddies anymore. And remember, we get close to people when we get too familiar with them. So I would say that going forward, maybe extending this, like I say, if we don't do anything, we stay as it is, but we can bring this up anytime and maybe get more aggressive to find some people to come in and do a lot of the same things that our current executive director has brought to this.
So Kurt, we have a motion, we can pull a motion. Do you think we should just let it go and then put on an agenda item on the?
I'm fine. If you were going to, if you're if you don't want to address it today, I would recommend just tabling it. Since it won't be to a date certain, we can just re-agendize at the time,
Okay.
but we've got the same staff report ready to go. In the meantime, I will work to figure out how to get you a closed session performance evaluation.
Okay.
Assuming that's going to cover the full scope of what you want. If you also need an open session, we can agendize that as well.
Well, I think we should begin with closed session.
Closed session. Speak freely.
So Chris, you want to pull your motion? Crystal's willing to pull hers.
Sure. I don't know.
Okay. So everybody understands we're going to not act on this item. We're going to table it. And in the meantime, we're going to have instruct Kurt to find some time to put on a closed session, kind of an evaluation. So these concerns that have been expressed can be expressed towards BB&K.
Yes.
Okay, we are moving on to item 9. Mr. Van Wagenen.
I hate to do this to everybody, but I do not have any update today.
We like you.
CalCog, Mr. Tisdale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quickly, I was on a conference call with them on Friday, and it was to talk about a Assembly bill that passed back in 2019, AB 285, which is the Strategic Growth Council, a report that they submitted. There's a lot of information on it, and I know you don't want to hear it right now, so I just invite everyone to go to CalCog's website. They have a breakdown on what they've done and how we're looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal, Sandra?
Unfortunately, I did not make it to that meeting. I do have 3 meetings for the board of this month, and the tour of the border is on Friday. So good.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman, our waterman. Ted, are you on? Can't see the whole.
I don't think so.
No, he's there. Ted?
Oh, there he is.
No updates for AQMD, and we had our meeting on Friday, but no major updates.
Okay. Ted Hoffman, are you? He walked away.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna keep an eye on Ted, and we will, I'll do my committee chair report. I will try and make it quick. I wanted to talk just briefly about General Assembly, just to make sure that everybody is on board.
Madam
Do
Chair.
know that we have, yes.
If I may, can somebody please make the screen bigger so you guys can actually see the PowerPoint? There you go. Thank you.
I hope it is on everybody's calendar for June 3rd. It's at Pachanga.
23rd.
23rd. I'm trying to rush you out of here. We have Steve Wozniak from one of the co-founders of Apple. I do want to remind you that this Friday, the nominations for the Community Service Awards are due. And reminder that there has been some changes, a little bit more tightening on the guidelines. Big volunteer in your communities, not a current public official, and not employed by a WRCOG member agency. Those are some changes that we want to make sure that everybody's aware. I am sure each of us has somebody in our communities. And to remind you, when you put on your calendar, so look at this, Thursday, not June 20th. See, I'm not the only one who makes mistakes. So we have the General Assembly on Thursday evening, starting at 4 with reception, and should be over 8:30. Then that Friday morning, we have executive committee meeting on Friday, June 24th at 10 a.m. And I just want to make sure you get that on your calendars because it is a change in the normal. What?
Isn't it usually Friday?
No, it's usually Thursday. Thursday, Friday, always. Always, always, always. Is there anything else?
Friday.
Unless you do committee.
Friday morning is at what?
Exec.
At what time?
It's usually 10.
That's
Usually 10.
I think it's 10.
10 or 11.
It was 10, right? On Friday?
Yes,
Usually-
10
yeah.
o'clock on
Yeah.
Friday. So I do, I wanted to bring this out, reminders, but also Do we have any individuals that are wanting and willing to work on an ad hoc committee for the General Assembly? There's a lot of little stuff, and I've been bringing it to our leadership, but I know there's many of you that have expressed an interest to be involved in the process. From picking the, I know we do this at ANF, but kind of narrowing down some of the tasks of the whole thing, so it's not all the staff that has to work on this, that we can all have input. I think input by the entire board, or at least the opportunity. So if anybody is interested, I would love to know. I just have Crystal. Is there anybody else that would be interested in being on ad hoc meeting to work on items? And the second thing is, if you have any contacts, Kurt and his team are doing well on the beginnings of our fundraising. We could certainly have each of us, if we have any contacts, to reach out to Kurt and kind of help him along the way on that part. And I just really want to put a thank you for our Women's History Month. We had the wonderful opportunity to have a women's panel, and we had Director Denstadt with the Water Board and Director Torres also. We had Mayor Reese on there. We had Miss Councilmember Casillas, as well as Councilmember White out of Murrieta. And it was well received, and I really enjoyed it. And I just want to thank the team. Lisa and Princess was the monitor. The monitor. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to move on. We're trying to get out of here, and I think Kurt's next.
Please see the written report, and remember the deadline this Friday for community service to the board.
Okay. So with that being said, does anybody have any items for the future agendas? All we have is the closed session one that for Kurt to follow up on. Is there any other item or any agendas that you would like to see brought forward?
Mike Laura has his hand up.
Can you put this at the top? I'm not seeing that because the hands go to the top. Mike.
Yeah, real quick. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think with the discussion that we've had, detailed discussion that we've had over this last agenda item for BB&K, I would like to bring back an agenda item where we look at maybe putting out an RFP for WRCOG Council, or coming up with a policy regarding council and our RFP requirements. Maybe it's an every 5 year, but something that Kurt can put together. Whether it's closed session or open session, doesn't matter, but I think we need to start looking at that.
Well, I was going to bring together, I'm an ad hoc committee person because it gets people focused on a specific task, that maybe that we should do that and work with Kurt even for the closed session item that we're talked about. If you want to chair up an ad hoc and get a few folks to get that streamlined for more specifics, I think that would be beneficial. Are you up to that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to.
Is there anybody else that would like to be on that ad hoc committee? Oh, come on. Crystal, you can't be on everything. Who else? Anybody up there?
I'll do it. I'll do it, Chair.
Mike, you need to grab a couple other folks. Okay, maybe a.
Can I do it too?
Who is that?
Okay.
Malcolm from Hemet.
Oh, Malcolm.
From Hammond, yeah.
All right. So you got Chris and Malcolm, and you could add a couple more if you want to sit, and you may want to pick, you had Christian Dinko and Supervisor Jeffries, get some of their input.
Yes,
okay.
Madam Chair.
And then we'll
Yes,
try
Madam Chair.
both items that you're talking about as well as the closed session one. And maybe we can streamline it all into one discussion.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, both items? The
Well,
session one?
Pardon?
You said
What you were
both
just
items?
sharing, both, meaning what you were just sharing and then what we talked about earlier.
Okay, copy that.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Madam
we've
Chair.
got lots of ad hoc committees. All right, so any general announcements from our members?
Yes, Chair Spiegel, if I may, I just want to say congratulations to Director Dinko for his retirement from RPD. And I look forward to continuing to work with him as a council
get that on
member.
my
Thank
did I
you so
say-
much, Chris.
No problem.
Kristen, you want to say anything real quick?
No, I really don't have anything more to add. I think we're moving along just fine. I'll be looking forward to scheduling those ad hocs and participating in that, trying to weed it out a little bit.
Okay. I won't put you on the spot, but I did. Any other general announcements? Okay, seeing none, our next meeting will be of the Executive Committee on Monday, May 2nd at 2 p.m. Thank you all for attending.
Finally, we're free.
This is the biggest crew we've been had in here. for a long
I
since-
know.
since